It's a bright, shiny September morning. I should be working on the mini Jeep, doing some final, well, not final, but some revisions that I've been making. But instead, I went on a Facebook Marketplace marathon last night and bought 3 separate things from 3 separate people in the course of like 3 hours. So that was kind of fun. So none of these things are super interesting on their own. Not really worth doing a video on each of them or anything like that. But there's a guy I recently found his channel. He's in Germany. His name is the Post-Apocalyptic Inventor. And he does a thing called the Scrapyard-a-thons, where he goes to the scrapyard and buys a bunch of cool stuff and gets it all working together in one video. So I'm thinking of doing something kind of similar here, but the American version, which is just the Marketplace marathon. So we bought a snowblower, 4-wheeler, and a winch. Let's see which of these things we can get working. All right, we got the first item unloaded here. It's a Yard Machines 24-inch snowblower. Picked it up for $65 yesterday. It's in pretty good shape. It's got some rust, and it's definitely been used because you can see the wear edge is pretty thin on the bottom, but the tines are all in good shape. Overall, it's just a pretty nice looking little machine. The story I got was they tried to start it this past winter after it sat all summer with some ethanol fuel in it, and he couldn't remember if he even got it running, but he said the last time it ran pretty poorly, and he suspected it just needed a carb clean. So it's full of fuel, so we'll have to drain all that out of it. And the pull cord is also broken. But for today, we can start it with the electric starter and then see about fixing this. Oil's a tad low. We'll add some oil. All right, so I have the electric start plugged in. Let's go ahead and crank it over and just see what happens. We're not going to do any... If the fuel was shut off, and I knew it was just sitting with fuel in it, I wouldn't try and start it. I would drain the fuel right away, but we know the fuel's already been through it. They already tried to run it. We're not going to do any damage, just see if it fires up. We choked it, full throttle, the pin's in. Primer sounds like it does stuff. Good. I would have liked to hear it pop over once just to know it has spark in it. All right, so I did end up checking spark off camera, and we had a good strong spark. I just checked it with the spark tester. I should have pulled the plug, and you'll see why in the end. But we're gonna go ahead and pull the carb and see what's going on in there anyway. All right, so the fuel that came out of this thing definitely looked like non-ethanol, but I think he said he accidentally had it in it once. So I'm curious to see what this carb looks like. A little bit of gunk in the bottom, but really not much at all. Whole carburetor looks to be in good shape. All right, so I'm gonna blow this thing apart. We'll clean all the jets with carb cleaner, run a torch cleaner through it, and some compressed air probably, and slap it back together. I am kind of rushing to the snowblower because I think it's the least interesting thing of the trio of things we're gonna work on today. All right, just button the snowblower back up now. I have to say, these are one of my least favorite small engines to work on just because of all the cowling and things you need to mess with just to get to the carburetor. You have to pretty much disassemble the whole heat shield. And then there's a long plastic piece that goes all the way over to here that you then have to pull off the electric starter. Well, at least where you plug the electric start into power. Just kind of a pain. Maybe they do that on purpose just to make you want to throw them away and go buy another. All right, we got it all buttoned back up. There are 2 screws here, 2 there, 2 there, 2 over here, and even 1 on the back side of the muffler you have to do. Kind of a pain in the neck. That carburetor didn't look that bad, so I'm curious if it's gonna fire up or if we have deeper issues, but hopefully it's just that. Let's go ahead and prime it a few times. Primer doesn't really sound like it's grabbing fuel. I don't know. start simple. We can check and see if it's getting fuel into the bowl of carb down here. Okay. Yep, we do have fuel coming out there. All right, well, I think I was wrong. I think the primer was working, and I just flooded the heck out of it. So we're going to have to clean that plug up, blow all the fuel out of there, and then see if it'll go. So let's press the button now and just see what comes out. A little bit of fuel, but not much. All right, so one of my tricks that works sometimes, but not all the time. Sometimes you can bring some life back to a spark plug by just burning it out. This one I'm skeptical on. This one's pretty fouled up. Probably just gonna get a new one. All right, so we wire wheeled the heck out of it, put a little bit of fuel in it, burned it out again, and then we just cleaned up in between the electrode and the contactor with some sandpaper, and it looks pretty decent. Worth a shot. All right, we got that plug stabbed back in it. Let's see if it fires up now. All right, so it does run. It runs really crappy, but it runs. So the smoke is because I'm running 20-to-1 fuel mix in it. That's all I had around the house. I didn't have any straight gas, so that explains the smoke, but the backfiring and everything, I don't know what's up with that. Now, when I pulled the main jet out of the carburetor, I wasn't paying too much attention. I could have put that back in upside down. I don't think it would cause it to backfire like that, though. That might take some more investigation, but it does run. We're going to fire it up one more time, make sure the transmission and the auger works. And then I think for today's video, we'll move on to the next object, and I'll come back and revisit this because it may take a little longer than I anticipated to diagnose why it runs like that. Ooh, something is wrong with this thing. So it ran great, but now it's puking oil. Looks like it's puking it up out of the PCV breather. I wonder if it's wildly overfull with oil. We checked it earlier and I topped it off. Yeah, look how thin that oil is running down there. That is very weird. I thought this one was going to be a simple fix, and it's looking like it might not be. All right, maybe we'll drain the oil, see what's going on in there, see if it's way full, and we'll go from there. All right, we got our drain pan set up here. I think this is going to be pretty liquidy. Yeah, that's a lot of fuel. The float felt fine, so I don't think it sunk. It was sitting inside, so it's not water. I don't know what happened. All right, well, we got it out in the yard now. Let it run for a while, see if it makes a milkshake again. We did change the oil. I'm hoping when it was sitting, the float stuck or something. It seemed to operate fine when I had the carb apart. Let's go ahead and try the auger out. Sounds like it's working. Yep. Yeah, so everything else works fine. We'll just let it sit here and run for a while and see if it does that again. All right, well, I ran it for probably about 10 minutes and it didn't make a milkshake. And I was even able to pop the cover off, and there was enough rope in there, still spooled up, that I was able to tie a new handle on. So I'm gonna run it a little bit more and then decide if I'm gonna keep this one or sell it. I wanna make sure it's definitely good before I sell it, if that's what I do. Or I can replace my little old one over here. This is a snowblower I currently use. It's 22 inch wide with only a 5 horsepower. It's a little underpowered, but it's like 30 years old and in really good shape. Other than when I got it for free because the tines were broken. And I just did some welding and works pretty good. So I gotta decide if I want to keep this one or the new one. All right, so now that we got the snowblower running and working, let's change gears a little bit to the second item. This is actually the first item of the day that kicked the whole thing off. So this is a Warn 8074. The model number is 8375. Actually, that's the part number, sorry. Serial number is 686995. And the date code is CU6. Not sure what that means. I can probably look it up and figure out what year this is. I've had a few of these. There is, well, we'll go show you. I'll get this one down to my shed. It's 8274. And this has the release for free spool. That is the big difference. This is way more common than the one I have on my table. I've never actually seen the one on my table. Most of them always have this release. That one's slated to go on my TJ whenever I get the time. And then somewhere over here, aha, here it is. I have a Bellevue. Oh, you guys can't see that. All right, now you can see it. So down here is a Bellevue, which is a very similar winch, but the predecessor to the 8274. Now this one is in really rough shape. All of these free spool mechanisms are broken off, and the end cap is in tough shape as well, and the brake mechanism. So this one I'm not sure what I'll do with yet. But this guy up here is in really good shape. Spins over nicely. The data plate's a little worn off, and the original solenoid packs and everything's here. So I gave 200 bucks for it. Anytime I see these things pop up for 100 or 200, 300 bucks, I go get them no matter what. This one really was a good deal because it came with the original controller, or what I believe to be the original controller. That's about $100 online. And then this end cap, which is the actual other mount, goes right there. This one looks original to it as well, and also in good shape. I think this, when I had to buy it for the 8274, you can still buy them new. These winches have been sold for years, and you can still go out and buy them. They're like $2,500, I think, brand new. So, pretty safe investment at 200 bucks, I think. If I remember correctly, this is over $100 just for this piece. So, I'm pretty happy with it. Hopefully it works, but I wouldn't be surprised if the solenoids in here are messed up. So I'm guessing this is the power wire, and we'll ground it somewhere else. So let me grab my jump pack, and we'll hook it up and see what happens. All right, we got the jump pack hooked up here. The guy I bought it from said he never hooked power up to it, which might be true, or it might be a case of he hooked power to it and it didn't work, and he didn't want to tell me that. Either way, we're going to give it a shot. Oh, we got noises. ground's not very happy over here. Nope. Ooh! It moved for a second. Why are you not engaged? Let me see if I can find a better place to ground this. All right, well, the motor spins, and I saw this spin once, but it's not wanting to spin again. It says we should be going out. All right, well, we pop the one screw off so we can get the cover off and see what's going on here. So I remember there is a way to just bypass all the solenoids and hotwire this. I just gotta remember how. I think it basically is you put power here full time and then jumper here to go in and out, I think. Maybe we'll try that. All right, let's give my idea a try. Nope. We do not have any more power out of the jump box. All right, we hooked up the jump pack, or the charger, a little more spunk. Maybe. Okay, that's not working. All right, I think we finally got it. There we go. Okay, well, things have progressed. I wanted to see what kind of shape this thing was in, so I went ahead and pulled the 3 Allen bolts to separate it from the bottom. And it is in phenomenal shape. Not that much oil in here, so I'm glad I didn't run it, really, but everything seems to work good. So now I could hear the motor spinning, but I just wanted to make sure we have both directions and all. And then we'll probably call it quits on this because I don't need to use this winch anytime soon, so no reason to invest the money in it now. But I'm gonna set you guys up on a tripod. Now you should be able to see which ways the motor goes and make sure all these gears are doing their thing. Well, I think part of our issue with the winch is we don't have enough amps running off the battery charger, so we're gonna charge up a battery and play with that later, which means we need to move on to the last thing of the video, which is this Yamaha Big Bear. This is a 350, I would guess from the early 2000s. I don't know where the data tag is. Maybe I'll find it. Yeah, so the story with this thing was it was parked 4 years ago and just not needed at the time. And he didn't even try and get it running, just decided to just go ahead and let it go when he dug it out of the shed and needed space. So all I did was look it over. It does pull over good. And yeah. One thing I did notice, which is kind of weird, kind of cool. I suspect, so these came in 2-wheel drive and 4-wheel drive. I suspect this is where a shift lever for the 4-wheel drive went. Other odd thing, there's definitely bolt or mounts for a carrier in here. And even the knuckles or the hubs have like a plug in them where the CV would go through. Now this thing doesn't indicate anywhere on it that it used to be 4x4. So is that a case of Yamaha just making it really similar between the two models? This one's just missing some parts? Or did someone make this 2-wheel drive because the 4-wheel drive stopped functioning? I don't know. Anyway, overall this thing's in pretty decent shape for a farm quad. The tires are a little rough, a little low on tread, but they do seem to hold air overnight, which is good. Overall, it's complete. A little bit of an oily mess over here. We have the original Mikuni carb. The fuel's been left on. It's got 2,800 miles and 897 hours. It is electric and pull start. I don't hear any fuel in it, but I don't know. And it does still have a battery, so hopefully that means the electric start still functions. Exhaust is a little worn out. What do we have in the little butt pocket? Oh, empty. Yeah, overall decent quad. So let me go ahead and check the oil, and maybe we'll hook up a jump pack or something to it and see if the electric start cranks it over instead of having to pull this bear over. Haha, bear, get it? Never mind. Oh, it does still have the key too, good. No chance that battery's any good. Yeah, I figured. All right, so I ended up pulling the battery and hooking the cables right to it because with the battery in there was no way to get a good connection. And if there was a little solenoid wire right there, or a wire that grabs power right from the battery, that would come unhooked. But I did hear some noises happen, and I see we have a neutral light. So let's see if we have a starter. Ah, bad connection. All right, we cleaned up our connection a little. We get that set to run. That there, neutral light's on. Sounds a little weak, but it's doing it. All right, so we plop the seat off there. I'd venture to say by the shape of these screws, this air filter has probably not been serviced in a long time. I'm gonna have to blow those out. All right, well, we ended up having to drill one of those screws out. And just as I suspected, a big old rat's nest. But the air filter looks to be in better than usual shape, I will say. That's not that bad for a mouse nest living in there. That'll get us by for today to run it. All right, we got all the gunk out of there. Let's plug with some carb cleaner and see what happens. Woo, it's a good fire. Probably should put that out. Oh, it didn't like that. Yeah, I should take that a little more serious. Ugh, that's disgusting. Rat turd and fuel. There we go. Ugh. All right, well, it definitely ran a little bit. So it's got spark. Plenty of spark. All right, I gotta investigate, see if there's any. Just shattered that drill bit, nice. I really don't see any fuel down in it. Now the fuel line was on. Yeah, so this guy's on. So either the float's stuck and our crankcase is full of fuel. We had a leak, but I don't think we did. That line looks to be in good enough shape. I mean, I'll definitely replace it if I pull it, but it's not leaking. What are the chances they put it away with running all the fuel out of it? Slim to none. Let's pop this off, see if anything comes out. You know what, screw it. Let's dump a little fuel in it, just a little bit, and see what happens. Well, I answered two questions. That's where our buildup of gunk is coming from, is all this leaking fuel, and that's where all the fuel went. Now, this actually kind of excites me because this is a really easy fix. If I get a new petcock or a petcock gasket, and hopefully that means the carburetor sat with no fuel in it, and we don't have to pull that thing out of there. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn it to reserve and try and start it real quick before we run out of fuel, but we will need to hook onto a aftermarket tank. Not aftermarket, a auxiliary tank. Let's go ahead and give it a shot though. Come on, baby. He really wants to. Yeah, buddy. Oh, it even idles. I can't ask for any more than that. That thing sounds good. Why is it the worst looking thing of them all? I thought for sure this thing was going to be super easy to get going again. I thought the winch was going to be super easy and this thing was going to fight me. Lo and behold, it's got a simple issue. And it runs pretty good. Sweet. Does it go into gear? Nope. Yep. Awesome. It's not even smoking. All right, well, that was really easy. So this is gonna need a petcock, or at least a petcock. Geez, why am I forgetting that very simple word, gasket? Geez, I don't know if I can make one for that, or if it's an O-ring in there. We'll pull that apart and see once it finishes draining off. It is gonna need a service kit. We'll service this up before we run it around too much. But I wanna get that fixed and at least take it for a spin around the yard before I do an oil change and a filter change. All right, so we pulled the petcock apart. There's a little O-ring in there. Looks super small. It's pretty shrunken. I have one that's giant. We'll see if it works, but I'll be pretty surprised. I think we'll just have to replace that petcock. No big deal. Believe it or not, the universal O-ring seems to be working. We'll also throw a new fuel line on there. I gotta put clamps on it yet, but I wanted to see if it leaked first. I'm really surprised it works. All right, we made it to the backyard. Well, the rear brake's pretty seized. I'll have to figure that out, but front brake works. And the hand brake works. Oh, there we go. I knew it was. I knew things were going too good. So as you guys saw in the last clip on this thing, it is super boggy. Now, the only other test I did was I did pull the air filter. That is not a cause of our restriction. So I thought we got really lucky on this one and weren't gonna have to deal with any carburetor related issues, but I think we are. Really should have power washed this thing yesterday before I started working on it, but I don't want to deal with it when it's all wet. This thing lived on a cattle farm, so it's just covered in poo and dust and dirt and debris. So we're gonna dig in there and get that little Makuni out of there and see what's going on inside of it. Looks like it won't be too bad to get to. Now that boot on the engine side of things is a little crusty looking, so we're gonna have to be really careful not to tear that, or else I'm gonna be SOL. Well, I tried to shut the fuel off to go ahead and pull this carburetor, and our fix yesterday did not last. We are leaking like a sieve again, so we're definitely gonna have to order a petcock. I figured that O-ring wouldn't work long term, but I was hoping to at least work for a few days. Oh well. All right, we got it popped out here, and I will applaud Yamaha in 1990, whatever, 2000 when this thing was made, because they are one of the few four-wheelers I've ever really run into that use a bolt-on flange on one side. I hate dealing with dual slip-on carbs. You just gotta fight them either way, in and out. Here, it was even better since one of the studs pulled out. Just undo this tube and then slide it on off there. That was pretty nice. Could have been a little bit better if they used bolts instead of studs, so then you could just slide it out sideways, but you know, beggars can't be choosers. Anyway, we need to get this throttle undone, and looks like someone's been here before me and they did a nice job at mangling these screws. Look like they'll still come out though. We'll just get a nice screwdriver that fits in there. Not surprised someone's had this carburetor out on this thing before because of how old it is. So, all right, we got the carb all the way out. We were able to get all these side bolts or screws out without mangling them, but the one holding the throttle bracket on here was really messed up and I made it worse. So we ended up just undoing the adjuster for the throttle and was able to snake the cable out of there to get the carb off. You can see someone's definitely messed with these screws too. Now, this is a common thing to see screws like this messed up. From what I've heard, the Japanese use a different, it's not SAE, it's not metric. There's like a third type of screwdriver that these screws are made for. These look pretty common, but some of the ones you see are definitely different. That's why they get so mangled all the time. I think you can order one of those screwdrivers pretty easily. I've never used one. I just have enough screwdrivers around. I usually have one that works nicely. Whew. This one's going to be a problem child. I'm going to try and get some vice grips on it and break it free. There we go. Aha. Well, that would be part of our issue. That guy's just floating around in there. That's cool. Looks remarkably clean, so I think I was right about there was no fuel in it. I think our main jet was just sitting out of it. I've never seen that. And I've been in hundreds of small carburetors. Huh, yeah, that makes total sense why it would run really good, but when you try to apply throttle, it was way rich. Alright, I'm going to pop this in here. We'll just do another once over of the carburetor. I don't think I'm going to worry about cleaning it. Everything looks pretty good. We'll just pop this jet back in there and go. That's funny. Can't make that up. Yeah, I see no reason to go any further into this carburetor. Everything looks good. I feel like that's supposed to be retained in there some way. Maybe that's held in by the bowl? I don't know. But I think we're going to slap her back together and see how it runs now. All right, well, as you can see, we got the jump pack hooked up, so let's bump it over that way. All right, I think we got it figured out here. So, what I found see where I wrap tape around there? This intake boot is trashed. I was trying to be really careful when I pulled that carburetor out of there because there was a lot of cracks going on, but I think I officially killed it. So we're going to have to order one of those on probably eBay. Kind of sucks. I was really hoping to have this thing ready to go, but it sounded like our idle issue was gone. Now it's just back and popping and backfiring because it's getting way too much air. So we went from way too much fuel to way too much air, which is kind of funny. Anyway, it's been a few nights. I was waiting for parts to come in the mail. So this is the old carb to intake boot. And that was really bad. I'm surprised it ran at all. Yeah, one of the worst I've seen where it still runs. I found that for 13 bucks on Amazon, and then I think it was 20 bucks for the petcock. We have them both installed now. Not a bad job at all. You undo the 2 screws back here. There's 4 bolts that hold the front plastics on, and 4 bolts for the tank, and you have access right to the top. It's really convenient. So not bad at all to install. The last thing we have to install is our fresh battery, which goes down here. And then we'll take this thing for a test spin and see if it's ready to go. All right, we made it out of the garage. Ate dinner first, so it's dark now. This thing has some power, I'll give it that. I mean, it is a 350. It is 100 times better with that new carb boot. All right, so with 2 out of 3, you know what that means. All right, so the battery's been charging for a little while, so we got a charger hooked to a battery because the battery's not that good. Then we have jumper cables running over here. We're gonna try grounding right on the side of the case here. Then I got this nice old lawnmower battery cable hooked up as our jumper. Now, if I remember correctly, this is the A terminal. This is F1, F2. So this is supposed to get power, and at the same time, you power up one side or the other, depending on which way you wanna go. So we should be able to hook power to here. Sweet. So we got a good direction that way, so now we need to swap this one over to there. All right, let's see if it goes the other way now. Good enough for me. All right, so the motor's good. But that can happen. See that shaft back there? It's not spinning, but the gear is. So I just spun it over, and I could see it's got a slot for a keyway, but I suspect our keyway is broken or missing. So I don't know if I can slip one in there without pulling that gear out. That'd be kind of nice. I'm gonna see if I can't do that. Actually, you know, let's pull the motor out of there, and then that should be really easy to get to. You gotta take the wins when you can. So I was thinking, if this keyway fell out of here, where did it go? To the bottom. Well, thankfully, it must have dodged all the gears. I don't see any carnage in there. And I was able to tip this thing out and drain the little bit of oil it had in the bottom. And this little guy popped out in phenomenal shape. So we can slap that right back in there. And then I'll show you how to retain it in there properly. Okay, so I realized I pulled the motor off and didn't show you guys. Didn't actually pull the motor off because it's held in by this bearing, which doesn't allow the gear off. But we really didn't need to take it apart because I was able to slip that keyway in there. Then as you'll see, there's a roll pin back there. Now that roll pin wasn't driven out from the back far enough. And that's what allowed our keyway to be able to slide out of there. So I had the keyway in, and I drove the roll pin out so that can't leave anymore. So we're gonna go ahead and polish up our armature here and slap it back together. These things are kind of a pain to get back together because you have to get all the little exciter magnets around your exciter armature. It's doable, it's just kind of a pain. So we're gonna slap this thing all back together, and then we'll take her for a spin one more time, and we should have a completely working winch, minus the solenoid packs wherever they went. I think we have some issues with the out spool one. We can dig into that though. All right, time to drop the motor back on. Aha, that wasn't as bad as I remember it being. Just kind of need like 8 sets of hands. All right. I don't remember which way we were clocked, so I'm going to go back and look at the video and see where our cables are supposed to land. All right, we got it about clocked just how it was. Now we need to flap this end cap on, which I thought there was a bearing in here, but it's really just a bushing. All right, we got our gasket surface cleaned up pretty decent here, and we have some SAE 30 oil to put in it. It recommends about 6 ounces. This is 18 ounces, so we'll do about a third. Well, a little more than a third. Skosh more. Yeah, that's probably good. All right. Now, let's get some sealant on here and throw the cap on. All right, so we got it all hooked back up now. Let's see if anything happens. Yeah, baby. All right. So out does not work, but in works. I think we might have a bad solenoid. All right, well, at least we know our keyway was our issue. And pretty sure the handle and everything all works, the controller. Our pin here works good. If we have to just replace one of the solenoids, or really what most people do is they just remove all 4 of these solenoids and buy a Albright solenoid. It's one singular square. It replaces all 4 of these with just one solenoid. Gives you all new cables because these cables are roached. And I like keeping things original, but this is one of those cases where I don't know if that's really worth it. I think each one of these solenoids is kind of pricey. They're maybe like 30 bucks a piece if I remember correctly. I don't know. I don't have any plans in the near future to do anything with this winch. As I showed you, I have another one down there that's destined to go in my Jeep. This one I just kind of wanted to keep around as a spare or for a future project. So I'm not going to go ahead and sink the money of a new solenoid in it, but it is nice to know that it does work and just needs some very minor work, or probably at the end of the day some money spent on it, and we would have a good winch. So this is number 3 checked off the list, because it does in fact winch. It goes in, it just doesn't quite go out. All right, we're going to call it a wrap on this episode. So we took 3 non-working things that I bought in one night on Marketplace, 3 very different things, and got all 3 of them functioning. This, I would say, is just about perfect. We have working headlights, a working taillight, working electric start, runs, shifts. I don't know if I mentioned it earlier in the video, but this brake was seized up, and at the same time, I couldn't put it into reverse. So I did a quick little bit of research. You have to put this brake down to get it into reverse, and believe it or not, the little adjuster down here for the return was stuck down in there, so this brake was seized up. I got that fixed. Brakes work. Everything works about it. It cleaned up pretty good. I power washed it the other night off camera as well, and it looks a lot better. So the 4-wheeler is good. Now I paid $300 for this, and I put $40 for a battery, like $13 for the intake, and $20 for the petcock. So that's about an investment of $75-ish. So we have $375 into this. I'm not going to sell it right away, but I believe it's worth easily 800-ish bucks, I think, as it's completely functional. Now the winch will go down in the garage. Now that we come into the domain of the things that need work or are just being stored away, our little winch here, we paid $180 for this, and it works fine, other than it didn't want to spool out very well. I think if I just cleaned up those solenoids and maybe replaced 1 or 2 of them, probably at the tune of 20 bucks, or more realistically, I will put a Albright solenoid on like I have for my other 8274, and I will have a ready to go winch. Now I don't plan to sell that. I'm going to keep it around for a project. I don't know what project yet, but I'm sure I'll come up with something that needs an old winch. So again, $180, maybe we'll have $250 total in it by the time we're ready to put it on a truck. And these are worth The 8074s I don't know exactly because I've never really seen one other than this one, but 8274s go for $1,000 in working condition. At least I see them listed on Facebook for that. So I realistically wouldn't ask quite that much for that one, and I don't plan on selling it. So that was also a good success. All right, we got to come down here to exterior storage for the last machine. So the little snowblower here was the cheapest item of the day at $65, and I didn't put any money into it other than some oil that was actually free because I picked it up off the middle of the road. That's a whole nother story. But yeah, this thing is, I've ran it a bunch more since the beginning of the video, and it's not overfilling with oil. I think I accidentally topped it off too much at first, so that's my bad. Or the float had sunk, not sure. We're gonna change the oil on it one more time just to be sure that it is clean and good, and make sure there's no fuel in it. And then this baby should be ready to sell because I already have a snowblower. And I estimate this is worth around 300-ish bucks. I might have to hang on to it till Christmas, or snow flies, so. All right, so thank you guys for watching. I usually like to work on stuff a little more interesting than these things, but I figured all three together kind of in one day like that was, I don't know, maybe worth a video. So let me know below if you guys like this video at all. And I'll keep buying stuff from Marketplace anyway because it's kind of a big thing of what I do. So thank you guys for watching either way. Please consider liking and subscribing. And I will see you guys on the next one.